guess, okay, that she was not able to control him. Now you gotta understand, he's on the ground and he's this way. He's just convulsing at this point. Whether it was intentional or whether it was accidental, okay, she took her right hand and positioned her firearm in his rib area, his rib cage area, and shot him through the chest. And as a result, Mr. Placide was fatally wounded. We believe, based on the circumstances, that everything the police did in this matter, okay, was wrong, right from the telephone call all the way through to the point where the emergency services got there and could not tend to him because he was handcuffed. He was dead already, and he was still handcuffed. One of the other things that is required is that if a police officer shoots somebody or hurts somebody, the first thing they have to do is render first aid, because you're supposed to save life no matter what. Instead of the police officer doing that, she dropped her weapon and she ran out of the room. So I could go into more details, but that's the story of Mr. Placide's life. He was a young man, he had never been in trouble. He was getting ready to go to college to play football. And so in response to that, we and family and friends have created the Bernard Placide Foundation in his memory. And it is our goal and our objective to be proactive, to be able to teach people and help people that are in mental health crisis, and specifically dealing with this type of situation with the police and so on and so forth. If you look around this county, if you look into Passaic County and around New Jersey, you probably have heard this has happened many other times, where somebody's locked in a room and they can't get them to come out and they end up dead. You know, and you have to ask yourself the question, why? Why does that happen? Why do they shoot them, right? Instead of, where are all the non-lethal methods that we can use, okay? Yeah, they tried to tase him. There were so many other things they could have done, right? But not even having somebody there to try to speak to him, to try to talk to him, to try to encourage him, you know, and so on. They spent no time doing that. So it's our position that Bernard was murdered. And thus, we give birth to this foundation, and we are hoping, okay, over the years, to be able to make an impact in this community and the rest of the world as far as mental health, the crisis, and how the police respond to it. That's our story.
Any questions? Any
Okay.
So I shared with them how the Inglewood Police Department attempted to promote that officer to make her a detective, and the city's outcry about that prevented that from happening. But I think it's important for them as students to think about, why would that even be a consideration? Especially that their investigation isn't even complete.
Right. So,
right?
anytime there's a shooting, the New Jersey State Attorney General's office comes in and they do an independent investigation. We have not had the results released, and it's been over a year and 4 or 5 months already that the shooting occurred. Now, we believe that the investigation is over and they're sitting on the information because they don't want to release it, because they're probably going to have to say this person was murdered. That being said, we can go on, you know, into the different various, you know, scenarios that should have occurred or would have occurred, and so on and so forth. The outcry by the community to stop this police officer being promoted, if you think about this for a moment, she is being investigated for a homicide, for a shooting, and the city would slap this family in the face and reward her with a promotion at this time. It's an outrage. You can think about it in your own terms. If something happened to one of your family members and you think those people were wrong or wronged your family member, and what they did was they promoted that person, rather than at least wait till the finality of the investigation and whether or not there's a clearing for that officer. So we feel very strongly that not just did the officer do what they did, not the other officers also failed in what they were supposed to do, but now we have the leadership. And the leadership has now shown us that they really just don't have any kind of empathy for a family if you're willing to promote somebody that's being investigated for a homicide. So that's that piece.
Anybody have questions?
Yes,
Oh, yeah, that's him.
yes, that's the young man there. Yes,
His name is Bernard.
his name was Bernard, yes. Okay?
So the other thing I want you guys to think about is, if this happened to someone who was white, do you think the response would have been the same? If this happened to someone who was Hispanic, would the response have been the same? If this happened to someone who was Asian, would the response have been the same? And I know you guys don't really know the answer to that question, and you can only kind of think about, based on your own experiences, how you perceive it might have been handled. But what we see in the news all too often is that it's young black men who are ending up killed by the very same people who are supposed to protect and serve their communities. And we know that mental health crisis has been exacerbated coming out of COVID, particularly in areas where there are a lot of minorities or low-income families, because they don't have access to resources. You have a mental, I work for a $1 billion corporation, and my insurance coverage gives me 30 mental health visits a year. And after that, they're not paying for it. So if I need it, and I don't have the money to pay it, that's on top of the $50 copay I have to pay for every visit, okay? So the $50 copay, at the end of 30 visits, I gotta pay for the whole visit out of pocket. That can add up for someone who's in treatment. So what happens to the people who don't have access to the resources to be able to pay for their treatment? They're left with no guidance, no help, no assistance. Oftentimes they end up in a mental health crisis. I'm sure that you guys saw when we were standing by the park and Brenda Thomas was talking, the young African-American man in the red hoodie who was kind of acting a little erratic. I'm sure you guys noticed that, right? I went to school in Brooklyn. I went to school with him.
That's my brother.
He was not like
my
that.
brother.
We hung out in high school. But life happens and people face challenges. And when they don't have access to the resources to get the help that they need, do they deserve to be killed by the police when they're in a crisis? And that doesn't matter whether you're black, white, green, yellow, or orange. We all deserve to be treated with respect and dignity, and if we need help, the expectation is that assistance is provided. So I thought it was important that we come here today, because again, I want you to understand that these things don't happen just in big cities. Did you know that this had happened? And you live in Inglewood. And you have a whole side of your community who was in mourning for this young man's life. Everybody deserves an opportunity to live. That is part of, when I talk about the disconnect between the hill and down the hill. Inglewood's 5 square miles. You're from Inglewood and you didn't even know. See how disconnected the communities are? And I had people from the community call me. Nina Nanasi called me. She says, Amy, I just heard about this. You have to tell me when things like this happen in our community so that we can share the information. But the communities don't talk to each other. So there could have been a whole group who would have come to support this family had they been aware of it. But because we don't communicate, there's like this divide when it doesn't allow us to support each other. And I want you guys to think about, how do we overcome that? Because if God forbid something happened in your family like that, we would want to support you too.
I just want to mention that it does happen, and it does happen in every community, and it does happen in every race, religion, and gender, and the responses are different. And it's very unfortunate because young black men historically are stereotyped. And, you know, they're looked upon as though they're very strong, they're very masculine, and there's fear. So a lot of times what happens is a police officer overreacts because of fear, all right? And not much can be done about that person's individual fear other than to train them, okay? Or have people from your own community, right, that understand and have grown up here being part of the police department or part of the fire department. And that was a formula that worked here in this community for many years. When I came through this department, if they hired a black, they hired a white. If they hired a white, they hired a Spanish. It was always done in an even manner, right? So that we knew there were checks and balances and everything was done fairly. But the process has changed. And since that change, okay, I'm gonna be very honest with you. We have some people, some police officers in this police department that never sat in a school next to a black kid. So how would you even know what you're dealing with? How would you understand, okay, that person? It's a phenomenal psychiatric situation, right? We can come here, we can talk about it forever. Read the newspapers. If you wanna really understand, look and see what's going on. Black child killed in Passaic by the police in Paterson, New Jersey. Black young man shot in Jersey City by the police with mental health crisis. And you have to ask yourself, okay, well, why when it happened in Teaneck and it was a Caucasian kid, did they spend 8 hours, okay, talking to him with social workers and doctors, and finally they talked him out, and he's alive. But these young black men are not. And so I bring this to you just to give you something to think about, and so on and so forth. I thank you all for coming here, and you know, understanding or getting a little bit of a knowledge as to, you know, what happened to Mr. Blassie. And you all look like you're gonna be very successful people. So good luck with your futures.
Thank you.
I had a question.
Yes.
So I was an activist back in grad school and worked on a lot of supporting a lot of cases like Tamir Rice and Tyree King, 13-year-old boys who were murdered in similar situations. And I know that we often, you know, with crises like these are remembering these people at their worst moments. And I wonder if anybody could just say a little bit about what Bernard, right? What he was like on his good days.
He always wants to help. You know, remember he was a football player. And then in the house, he's like, you know, he's tall, he's big. He always helps. We miss him so much in the house. When we need something, call Bernard. That's mean he's like, he has love for everybody. Everybody loves in the house. And then when we come to something, always call Bernard for whatever. Me, myself, he always makes sure I sleep well, I eat good. He always there for me. You know, I miss all of that. Especially when I'm studying at night. He always want me to sleep on like early, to wake up early for the kids, to the other kids, but he always there for me. I can say we all miss him on different ways because he's been helping a lot of people in the house. And friends been talking to him at school. One of the teachers always said he always wants to be a leader. And then he wants to be an entrepreneur. He loves business. And he always said to me, Mommy, I'm going to become big. I'm going to become successful. And then his dream is, you know, he was a chef. He likes to cook. And I think he has that from God. It's a gift from God. He can cook anything he wants. And then one day he said, Mommy, I want to open a big farm. He wants people to eat good, fresh food. That's what he's doing. That's what we are doing right now is a part of Bernard's dream. And we want to live in, everybody knows about what he's doing. Even though we are doing the foundation, it's Bernard's dream to become big, to let people know about what he's taught, what he was doing when he was alive.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you.
I'm gonna grab a picture for Professor Coleman and we'll send her a copy too.
Yeah.
Thank you. Mr. Lee's gonna take a picture. Come on, guys, we'll close in.
Donations also.
Yeah. and we have Vivian who first,
Guys, I'll send it to Professor Coleman, I'll send it to their professor.
yeah, they will.
And then he can disperse it.
Okay.
So their professor is from Englewood. He
Okay.
graduated from Dwight Morrow in 1988. I'm 87, he's 88. And they're here touring the Fort Dillard to learn about the history of the Black community in Englewood and, you know, what it looks like today versus what it was, 20 years ago, 40 years ago, 8 years ago. And I thought it was important that we come by here today because I want them to understand that these things happen right here in your own backyard. You know, we see it on TV and it seems so far away and it doesn't have the same impact, but you have to know it happens right here, you know.
And you guys, you're the next generation that's now.
That's right.
So it's gonna have an impact sooner rather than later. So
Yep.
it's better that you're aware and you know the history behind.
So thank you for having us.
Thank you.
You're gonna do better.
guys.
Better and better.
Absolutely.
You know?
That's why they're here learning.
Yeah. Thank you.
So they can do better than we did.
Yes, yes.
I'm gonna feel some more. Anybody gotta go to the bathroom
It was
before
for
we
you
start
guys.
walking?